Hey everyone, Janae here. Welcome back to the channel. So, I'm going to do a recap on the Netflix show Worst Ex Ever. And for this particular episode, this is for my people that are familiar with the 90 Day Fiancé franchise. I believe he was on the Before the 90 Days. Was it Before the 90 Days or was it the other way? No, I think it was Before the 90 Days, but his name is Geoffrey Paschel. And he was on the season. He was on the pandemic season because it premiered in February 2020. He was on Big Ed season when we first seen Big Ed. If y'all know who I'm talking about, Big Ed, the one with the really really short neck and is really really short. He was on his season again. His name is Geoffrey, and he was on this episode of Worst Ex Ever. So we all go ahead and talk about it. So we are talking to his ex named Kristen. She said there were so many red flags in the beginning that she should have ran. She should have ran. But she was, and he lives in Tennessee. So she had just gotten a new teaching job at her dream school. I'm not sure if she went to high school there or whatever, but anyway, and she had just gotten out of a relationship. She was dating somebody all throughout college and grad school, and I guess she just wanted to see what else was out there. So they ended up breaking things off, and she found Geoffrey on a dating app. She met him in December 2017, and they met up at this Mexican restaurant, a local Mexican restaurant, and they hit it off instantly. He said he used to be an actor on he was an actor on some crime shows, and she said he was, you know, coming on really hard and really fast because they be out and about shopping. So let's say you out and about shopping with your man and you're like, oh, I really like this sweater, but you don't buy it for whatever reason. You ain't got the money, or you're just like, oh, it's cute, but maybe you don't want to buy it. She said he would show up with the sweater that they was looking at the store, or just show up randomly, mind you, at her house with groceries, which she thought was sweet. And I'm like, that's a little, I mean, if I gave you, see, don't just randomly pop up to my house. But anyway, so at the time he had custody of his two kids. They were 10 months and 2 years old with his ex-wife named Brittany. And then, they're dating and all that stuff. And all of a sudden she sees these two teenage boys at his house. And he's just like, oh, these are like, he made it seem like these are just some like neighborhood kids that just, excuse me, go and kick it at his house every now and again. Now hold on to that bit of information. All right. So when she saw him on the dating app, he went by Geoffrey Ian, but she was at his house and she saw a piece of mail from him and it said Geoffrey Paschel. And she's like, hey, that's weird. I thought your last name was Ian. And he's like, oh, it's not a big deal. He made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. My last name is Paschel, but my middle name's Ian, blah, blah, blah. But anywho, so let me see. My bad. Okay, so she gets a call from his house phone, which she does not use and or doesn't use often, and she did not recognize the number. So she looked it up and she saw it was registered to another ex-wife, and finds out that they have children. Those teenage boys that we seen at the house were the children. Again, yes. So she searches his name and she finds all of these court cases about him: domestic assault, child neglect, and in fact, he had been married 4 times. So the first marriage, he was like really young, like 1920, early 20, something like that. That one got annulled. And marriages 2 through 4 were divorced. And he did time. He at the time it did time in Texas, federal time, and there were charges regarding possession and all of that. All right. So when she confronted him, he made it seem like it wasn't a big deal, and he didn't tell her all of that because he was like, "Oh, you wouldn't have taken me seriously. You probably wouldn't have wanted to date me," which probably not, but but at least give her that chance to, be open and see if, she wanted to continue a relationship with you. So we take it back, way back in the time. Okay. So we interview his second wife. They interview his second wife, Sabrina, and they go back to 1996 when they met. And relationship is going good. They get engaged. He ends up pushing her. When they became engaged, he ends up pushing her, but she still married him. They got married in 1998, and she said from that moment on, his mood flipped. He, was abusive. He even abused her when she was pregnant and all of that stuff. If she stayed out too long, he would cut the power off. Yeah. He would cut the power off, and he did make mention that he kind of lives outside of Nashville, so he lived out of the way, very isolated from her family and all of that, friends, and he was also dealing drugs. He said he was using them at one time, but he had stopped. And then he went to jail in 2001. Sorry, I have notes that I'm sorry. It was a lot, y'all. But he had went to jail in 2001, and he was sentenced for 30 months, so a little under 3 years. And, he was in jail, and, they were still together, and she was hopeful that, he had changed for the better. Unfortunately, it got worse. And, it got worse, and she was like, you know what, bump this, I'm done. But he ended up filing divorce on her first. And then after that, he ended up, unfortunately, using the kids as pawns and all of that. All right. So let's go back to 2008. At this time, it's March 2008, or 2018, excuse me. And Kristen and Geoffrey have been dating for about 3 months now. So unfortunately, his youngest son with Brittany, who when they met, it was about 10 months. So he's like a year at this point. He unfortunately passed away. They don't know what caused it. Probably, sudden infant death syndrome, unfortunately. But the baby ended up passing away. The autopsy ended up being inconclusive. So after that point, again, he hadn't put his hands on her yet, but he started doing little things like pinching her, bending her finger back. So now he's starting to get abusive. And again, he lives out in the country. He's already isolated her from her friends, her family, all of that. So then when they were officially together for like a year, that's when the abuse really started and all of that. So he ended up proposing in 2019. Her parents were not happy about that. I wouldn't be happy either. And he was just really controlling, things like she wasn't allowed to cut her hair because he liked long hair on women and all of that stuff. She couldn't wear makeup. Okay. So then the night comes in June 8th, 2019. They had went out with some friends and we're going to go out later in the day. After that, they were going to go out later. And she's like, okay, cool. Let me go home. Let me walk my dog real quick and then, get myself together, freshen up a little bit. And then I can move and then we could go back out. So she gets home. So they get home. She goes and walks the dog and all of that. And when she gets back into the house, that's when the attack happened. He ended up smashing her head on the floor over and over again, shoved her against the wall, and drug her by the stair, drug her up the stairs by her hair. This man is nuts, okay? This man is crazy. And then, after that, he just tells her to wash her face and go to bed. Get in the bed. So, being that she done got knocked upside her head repeatedly, she's afraid to go to sleep because what if she has a concussion? She might not wake up. So she waits till he goes to sleep and she sneaks out and runs to her neighbor's house. Tells her neighbor what happened. At this point, it's like 1, 2 in the morning. Calls 911. The cops show up at the neighbor's house first. They were a little reluctant to open the door at first because they thought it was Geoffrey. The cops come in and they ask what happened. They, do what they do, take pictures. Then they go to the house. They were at Kristen's house at this point because she still had her house. Excuse me. So they asked Geoffrey what happened, and he just flipped the script. He's like, she did it to herself, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, this don't add up and all of that. So they ended up arresting him. And when they arrested him, they put him in the cop car. And, they handcuff you, put you in the cop car and all that stuff. And he started trying to kick the window out. Mind you, in handcuffs. Crazy. So he's trying to kick the window out. And, they had to pull over and connect leg irons to his handcuffs, y'all. This dude is crazy. I'm like, yo. So Kristen ends up going to the hospital. She ends up having a concussion, but she was sent home with pain medication. Geoffrey bailed out the next day. Her parents took her to the court or to the police station to get a protection order against them and all that stuff. And that day, it was over. They filed a civil and a criminal case, and it was over between them. So, January 2020, the case is received by the lawyer, and he's getting charged with aggravated kidnapping, domestic assault, and interference with an emergency call. Now, mind you, January 2020, February 2020, 90 Day Fiancé Before the 90 Days premieres, and guess who is on it? If you said Geoffrey, you are absolutely correct. He is on that episode of 90 Day Fiancé, and come to find out, he had gotten this relationship started in 2019. Kristen had no idea. So the assault happened in June 8th into 9th, it was like late at night, overnight. And he was filming going to Russia with Varya July 11th because he bailed out. So a month later, he started filming. Crazy. So my question is, did they not do a background check? And if they did a background check, were they just like, oh, whatever? What the hell? Whew. Anyway. So, mind you, Geoffrey's on TV. Nobody knows about what's going on as of yet. His fan base starts growing. Everybody loves him, and he denying all these allegations. Now, remember, if you remember in the season, he had gotten Varya, I believe she was from Russia, gotten Varya to come to Tennessee to be with him. So, October 2021, the trial begins. Mind you, Varya was there every day of his trial, and we're gonna get back to that fool. But anyway, This dude Geoffrey, he's just so like he just thinks he's so narcissistic. I hope I'm using the word correctly because you know how people like to say narcissistic and everything now. But he's just so narcissistic and full of himself. He takes the stand, and you know when as somebody on the defense or like the defense attorney, that's something you don't really advise that person to take the stand. So, trial begins October 2021. And I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot for how long the trial lasted, but the jury doesn't deliberate very long, which tells you they have a decision. So they found him guilty, and he got sentenced in February 2022. They had a few people. So what they did was, because of the case it was, they didn't have many testimonies from, excuse me, they didn't have many testimonies from the victims and all that stuff, except I believe. But for the sentencing, they allowed some of the victims to come and speak. So the ex-wife Allison came out, told her story about abuse and he raped her several times. And Geoffrey takes the stand at his sentencing, and he talks more so about himself. He doesn't feel remorse. He's not showing any remorse or anything like that. He's talking more so about himself. So the judge, I love what the judge said. The judge was like, "Oh, Mr. Paschel has a desire to inflict as much emotional damage to these women as possible." Come on, judge. Come on. This dude is sick. So the state was requesting 16 years for the sentence. The judge sentenced him to 18. 18 years. He is due to get out in 2040. Mind you, Varya still supports him. They're still together. She's living at his house, and she's a permanent resident of the U.S. She's been so since 2021. And Kristen ends up being friends with Geoffrey's exes. You know, they have something common together and all of that stuff. And she actually reconnected with her high school ex-boyfriend, and they're now married and they have kids. So, crazy story. Let me know what y'all think. If y'all seen it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next video.